He's not breaking any rules. He's not hiding anything. And yet, every single driver in the NASCAR Cup garage is staring at the same data, the same footage, the same podcast breakdown, and none of them can do a thing about it. Shane van Gisbergen has a weapon built into his feet. NASCAR handed it to him by accident. And 3 years later, the entire garage is finally being forced to admit it. This is the story of the clutch nobody else can use, and the advantage that might be too big to ignore much longer. Here's what happened. Back in 2023, on a rain-soaked street course in Chicago, a Kiwi driver making his Cup debut won the race. Cameras caught something strange in his footwell. He wasn't driving like an American stock car racer. He was driving like a touring car champion. Where did this come from? Bathurst. Years of V8 supercars racing, 3 Bathurst 1000 wins, 3 championships, all built around a mechanical reality American drivers never had to deal with. Why does it matter now? Because that footwork has turned into the most lopsided technical edge the sport has seen in a generation, and insiders are now quietly asking whether NASCAR should step in and shut it down. But what is he actually doing? And why can nobody else just copy it? To understand what's happening, you have to understand what NASCAR's next-gen car gives every driver. It runs a 5-speed sequential gearbox, no clutch needed to shift. For every American in the field, Hamlin, Larson, Byron, Bell, the clutch pedal exists for exactly 2 moments, leaving pit road and the green flag start. After that, it's dead weight under their foot. Then Van Gisbergen showed up. While every other driver in the field left foot brakes with a clutch pedal doing nothing, he runs a full heel and toe sequence, blipping the throttle, working the brake, and stabbing the clutch all at once, all the time. Was this just a quirky technique, or was something more calculated? For 2 years, the American motorsport media had a simple explanation. It was a fluke. Chicago was rain. Sonoma was a flash. Watkins Glen was the weather again. But then 2025 happened. He won 5 of 6 road course races that season. His average finishing position on road and street courses was 3.34. The next closest competitor wasn't even close to half that. In 2026, he won at Watkins Glen by over 7 seconds and took a pole position by a margin bigger than the gap from 2nd to 8th place on the whole grid. The fluke narrative collapsed, and the garage had to start asking real questions. So why does this footwork actually matter mechanically? In supercars, the rear differential is locked, meaning under heavy braking, the rear tires fight each other, hop, and lock up. Drivers learn to dip the clutch at the apex of braking to disconnect the engine from the rear wheels for a fraction of a second, letting the car settle, then re-engage to actually pull the nose into the corner. Here's the twist. Van Gisbergen himself has downplayed it. On the Dale Jr. Download podcast, he said the next-gen car's differential is open, meaning the exact mechanical problem that made this technique necessary in supercars doesn't technically exist the same way in NASCAR. His own words, he doesn't think it's a big advantage, adding that it's simply all he's ever known. But the telemetry tells a different story. According to the breakdown, SMT data, open to every team in the garage, shows he's still doing it every single corner, every single lap. And the effect isn't showing up in single lap speed. It's showing up 30 laps into a run, when everyone else's right rear tire is cooked and his isn't. What happened next shocked the garage. Dale Earnhardt Jr. broke down the mechanics in detail. Van Gisbergen brakes with his right foot while keeping his left foot ready on the clutch, using small modulations to dampen wheel hop and drivetrain load during downshifts. Something, in Earnhardt Jr.'s own words, NASCAR drivers simply don't do. So here's where it gets tense. Is this just superior technique? Or is it exposing a flaw in how the next-gen car was engineered? The clutch pedal was never designed to be a performance tool. It was built to launch the car off pit road and then sit untouched. Nobody anticipated a driver using it as a rotation and tire preservation device for an entire race distance. That's fueling real conversations behind closed doors. Conversations about whether this falls within the spirit of the rulebook, or whether NASCAR needs to consider mandating a clutch lockout after launch, similar to systems already used in other racing series. It sounds extreme, but insiders say it's being whispered about, and it raises an uncomfortable question for the sport. If a driver finds an advantage NASCAR never intended to exist, is the answer to let the field catch up or to take the advantage away? The reactions from inside the garage have been remarkably blunt. Kyle Larson, widely regarded as the most naturally gifted driver in the field, was direct when asked if he could learn it. "Zero chance," he said, adding that even if he tried, there's no way it'd outperform what he already does with left foot braking. Denny Hamlin, who actually used heel-and-toe technique earlier in his career, says going back isn't realistic after 2 decades of muscle memory built the other way. He doesn't believe any young American coming up through the lower ranks is going to commit to learning it either. Christopher Bell admitted he wouldn't even know where to start. Ryan Blaney said he'd love to try it if he had unlimited practice time, which NASCAR's testing restrictions simply don't allow. Austin Cindric actually flew to Australia to attempt to learn the technique in a supercars wildcard race. He came back and still can't execute it reliably under race pressure. And maybe the most telling reaction of all came from his own teammate, Ross Chastain, who said his feet are simply on the wrong pedals when he tries it, that it's pure muscle memory built differently over decades, and at this point in his career, there's no rewiring it. Fans, meanwhile, have split into 2 camps online, those calling it the most impressive skill gap in modern NASCAR history, and others wondering aloud if it's time for NASCAR to step in before one driver's footwork starts deciding championships. So what does this mean going forward? On road and street courses, the picture is already clear. His career win rate sits at 33%, more than double Kyle Larson's and more than double road course legend Marcos Ambrose's career rate. Denny Hamlin says he's not sure there's ever been a gap this large between one driver and the rest of the field on road courses in NASCAR history. But the real story might be what happens next on ovals. The same tire preservation, car rotation philosophy that built his road course dominance isn't exclusive to road racing. It's a racetrack skill, and it travels. He picked up his first oval top 10 in 2025, followed it with a road course win the next week, and in 2026 finished 11th at both Phoenix and Martinsville, short tracks where braking discipline and long-run tire management decide races. Kyle Larson himself admitted it. If Van Gisbergen figures out the ovals, the rest of the field has a real problem. That includes the championship round at Phoenix, a short track in the playoffs where tire management is everything. So here's where this leaves the sport. A technique nobody else can copy. A driver downplaying it in public while the telemetry tells a different story. A garage full of insiders quietly debating whether the rulebook needs to change before this becomes even bigger than it already is. If Shane van Gisbergen wins at Phoenix in the championship round using a skill not one other driver in the field can replicate, what happens then? Does NASCAR let it stand? Or does the pressure to level the playing field finally force a rule change? Is this simply the rise of one of the most technically gifted drivers the sport has ever imported, or the beginning of a fight over whether his advantage is even one NASCAR should allow to continue? If you want to stay ahead of this story as it develops, subscribe now, because this conversation inside the garage isn't slowing down, and we'll be breaking down every new development the moment it happens.